Hey, good morning, parents. My name is Jeff Pruder, and I am your student's AP Lang teacher this year. What you're currently looking at is a new project for me, all about parental involvement. In the past, I've absolutely sent out emails and links and all of those things, and that's been wonderful, and I'll continue to do so. But I also kind of like this idea of sending out a video at the start of a unit or as we're wrapping something up, just so you can kind of know not only what we're doing, but also why we're doing it. I think that's really, really important. So that's going to be one of my goals this year. I'm going to try and send these out every couple weeks. Again, just so you kind of know the what and the why, which is actually something we talk a lot about in AP Lang, but more on that a little bit later. This video might be just a little bit longer simply because I want to talk a little bit about some things we talked about at curriculum night for those who couldn't join us, and I also want to catch you up on what it is that we've been working on here in our first month together. I want to start with our summer reading, which was Over the Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell's text from the early 2000s, which actually holds up really well for the most part. We had a really, really nice time with that. I thought the students did a wonderful job. It was a great introduction to nonfiction text for a few reasons. One, for many students, this was the first major work of nonfiction they've been asked to read. Chances are they've done plenty of articles before, but haven't really sat down and looked at what nonfiction has to offer in terms of a large book. So that was really, really good. The other thing I like about it is it puts a lot of emphasis on looking for what are the consequences or implications for certain things that you might implement. That's really important for argument writing. And that's two of the three main types of writing that we do in AP Lang. We do rhetorical analysis, and then we do two types of argument writing. One is just called argument writing, at least on the AP exam. The other is synthesis, the idea of pretty much studying a variety of sources, taking those 4, 5, 6 sources, synthesizing those together into one thing to support your claim. So the tipping point was actually a great example of that, a great mentor text that we get to go back and look at for how it is that Malcolm Gladwell talked about implications, consequences, and how he used that to support his argument. So they did a wonderful job with that. They took that book and they read an extension piece, synthesized those together, a little bit more modern of a text, something from the last few years, that just kind of establishes the complexity of a lot of what Gladwell was talking about. So I thought they did a wonderful job with that. They did some great discussions based on that, some Socratic seminars, and then some writing extension based on that. The other part of the summer work that they were asked to do was their summer journals, in which they were writing about or from a variety of texts or their summer adventures. There are also some creative writing opportunities, and those got sent out periodically throughout the summer, which was great. And of course, students could bring in things on their own. What I loved about that is in our first full week together, so I guess the second week of school, I sat down with every single student. We had at least a 10-minute conference to go through their journals. That helped me in a major way get to know your student, how it is that they think, what it is that they're interested in, what is it that they tend to do in their writing. Those things are going to be incredibly helpful. They've already been so, and those will certainly help us as we continue to move forward. What they're doing with those is what we're kind of in the middle of right now, and I guess kind of working our way to the finished product, which is creating more of a long-form essay. One of the big things we have to do in AP Lang is get away from the 5-paragraph essay. I know your students can write those. They wouldn't be in AP Lang if they couldn't, but no one actually writes like that, right? No writing that anyone enjoys reading is in that structure. So we've been taking a look at how do real writers write in interesting ways? How is it that we can kind of go into those texts and mine for different ideas, and then make those our own? And that's what we're working on right now. They read 3 essays over the course of last week and a little bit beyond, all very, very different, all that took different risks as far as the argumentative structure. And now this week, they are finally taking one of their journal entries, the one that they've decided on and they've conferenced on and they know is the one, and they're going to kind of use one of those texts, at least use that as their mentor text as a model for how they want to try and take a risk and write a little bit different of an essay than they've ever written before. So we're really excited to get into that. They're pitching their ideas today, and then they've got the rest of the week to write. And they're going to be getting feedback throughout the week on that rather than just as an end product. In fact, we've been talking about it, and it's a little cheesy admittedly, but instead of feedback, feed forward, getting more getting more information on the writing early in the process so they can go forward with it rather than having to go back and make ginormous revisions. Certainly that's part of the writing process, as well as going back but we also want to get involved earlier. And so even the planning, again, is something they're going to be conferencing on. I think talking through those is so incredibly important. And so we'll be doing that not just for this, but certainly for the others. So excited to see what they come up with. I also love the types of readings that they were asked to do. We went into the New York Times, and we went to the Atlantic, and we went to the Washington Post to look at how real writers are writing. That's going to be so important. One thing you're going to hear a lot from me, and hopefully you'll hear from your students when you talk about this class with them, is reading like a writer. Instead of trying to figure out what the writing is trying to teach us, which is important, we're also looking at how it was constructed. It's the difference of, if you go into a cool old building, you can certainly look at it and learn about history through it, but we would try and look at it more as architects. How was it crafted? Why was it crafted in that way? That's what we're trying to do, but we're trying to do that with writing. One final piece I want to inform you about is independent reading, which I think at first glance sometimes feels like, why are we taking time out of an AP course to carve out independent reading time? Isn't that something that gets usually done at the lower grade levels? I think that's a bit of a misstep, that we don't put more emphasis on independent reading. We know that students who read on an average of 20 minutes a day tend to end up in the 90th percentile for their reading scores, 20 minutes a day. That's really not that much. But somehow that's kind of gone away a little bit. So 3 days a week, we carve out about 15 minutes, because we do have a lot that we need to get to. But we've got some really, really good nonfiction texts in your students' hands right now. Certainly a few students brought in works of fiction at home that they were in the middle of or they really wanted to read. But our classroom library also has 150-ish award-winning nonfiction texts, which is great because that's opening them up to something that they, again, haven't really experienced before. The Tipping Point was probably the first major nonfiction text they read. Now they all have another book in their hands. Some of them are already on to book 2, and that's fantastic. So we're carving out 15-ish minutes 3 times a week, which is great. But we need a little bit of help with that as well. We need to encourage them to be reading even more than that. And I know your student is a good reader. He or she wouldn't be in this class if they weren't. But there is also a bit of a danger in having a really skilled non-reader. And what I mean by that is simply the idea of being a good reader when you have to read, but not ever reading because you want to. No test will undo the consequences of having your student walk out of here and not actually enjoy reading and know where to go and find really good books. So the pleasure is a huge part of it. We need to have it be a pattern, as we said. 20 minutes a day is such a great goal, and that's something that you can encourage and ideally even model yourself. Maybe that happens before dinner or after dinner or right before bed. Everyone just kind of curls up on the couch or whatever it is and does a little bit of reading. And I know people are busy and that sounds like a lot to get through, but it's really, really important. And I know we have sports. I'm coaching right now. I know the fall play is getting ready, marching band. There's a million things going on, but we have to carve out time for it. I think that's incredibly important. And last but not least, the reason it's important is because of one of the 3 writings they do on their AP exam, the argument essay, in which they get a prompt and they don't get any sources. So the more of a kind of a growing contextual pool they can have, the more that they can pull from, the better. And so certainly the articles we're going to read in class will help them kind of dabble in a bunch of different subjects. But if they can be not even experts, but just have a working knowledge of a bunch of different subjects, that goes such a long, long way to help them on the exam and really beyond that, which is really our big goal. So independent reading really helps with that as well. So I hope that's a good kind of overview of what we've been working on this first month and what we're currently working on this upcoming week. And I'll try and get these videos out a little bit faster now that I've kind of settled on liking this idea. So I'll try and cut down the time a little bit on the videos too. Folks, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I look forward to communicating with you not only through this, but through email and ideally in person. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you so much. It's been a really, really wonderful start. Ask your student what he or she's reading. Ask your student about what essay it is that they are working on this week and why, out of everything they had, is that the one they're going with. Ask those questions. Ask why. You don't have to be an expert on reading or writing. Asking those questions and having them have to explain their thinking, their choices, goes a long, long way. So thank you again. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon.